Welcome to the Explainer. For millions of us, the smog check is this mandatory ritual we have to go through. But have you ever stopped to think about what actually happens to your car during that time? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the whole process.
Think about it. You drop off your car, you hand over your keys, you wait around for a bit, and then you get a piece of paper back. Seems pretty simple, right? But what's going on in that garage? For most people, it's a total black box. Just this required procedure where the real details are a complete mystery.
Well, today, we are going to demystify all of it. We're going to start with the inspector's official rulebook, the why behind what they do. Then we'll walk through the pre-inspection and the 3 key tests. We'll even see what it looks like when the car runs on a digital treadmill. And finally, we'll get to the bottom of how that pass or fail verdict is actually decided. To do all this, we're going to follow a 1999 gasoline car through the whole thing.
Okay, let's dive right in. Look, to really get what a smog check is all about, you first have to understand the official playbook. This is the manual that every single inspector in California is required to follow word for word. And this is it, the Smog Check Manual, straight from the Bureau of Automotive Repair. Now, this is not just a bunch of loose guidelines. It's a really precise, legally binding document that spells out every single step. And that's super important because it's what ensures every vehicle gets tested the exact same way against the same strict state emission standards. And the manual gets incredibly specific. It literally has charts that lay out exactly which tests are required for which kind of car. So for our 1999 car, for example, it falls right here under these Bar 97 rules. That means it needs a tailpipe test, a full visual inspection, and some very specific functional checks. There is absolutely zero guesswork for the inspector.
All right, so let's move on to the very first stage. This is what happens before any testing equipment even gets close to the car. It's all about setting the stage to make sure the inspection is accurate and, safe. So, before plugging anything in, the inspector has to run through this mandatory pre-checklist. They're looking for any safety issues, like a fuel leak. They're making sure their own equipment is properly calibrated, and they're getting all the paperwork in order. This makes sure the test is safe and legit right from the get-go.
Next up, the car's unique identity has to be logged into the state's central system. The inspector scans the VIN barcode, that's the long number on your dashboard, and double-checks that it matches the registration. Every little detail, right down to the odometer reading, gets recorded. And this has to be perfect because that info is what determines the exact emission standards your vehicle is going to be tested against.
So with all the preliminary stuff done, we can finally get to the core of the smog check, and it's really broken down into 3 distinct parts: a visual inspection, some functional tests, and a check for any visible smoke. First up is the visual inspection. You can kind of think of the inspector as an automotive detective here. They're going through a checklist to make sure all the original pollution control equipment is actually there and hasn't been messed with. We're talking about things like the catalytic converter, that's the part that cleans the worst gunk from your exhaust, and other systems like the EGR valve that reduces smog-forming gases, or the EVAP system that keeps raw fuel vapors from escaping your gas tank. Everything has to be just like it was when it left the factory.
And the key word they're looking for is tampering. This is a huge red flag. Officially, tampering means any emissions control part is either missing, modified, or even just disconnected. So if it's not how the factory designed it to be, that's a big problem.
Okay, the second part involves a bunch of functional tests. See, it's not enough for all the parts to just be there, they have to actually be working. For a car from 1999, this means checking the onboard computer, testing the gas cap to make sure it holds pressure, and even making sure the engine's timing is set correctly.
And here's a perfect example of a simple but super important functional check, the check engine light test. It's a really basic sequence. The light has to come on when you turn the key, and then it has to turn off once the engine starts. If it stays on, or if it never lights up in the first place, that's an automatic fail. It means either there's a problem the car is trying to tell you about, or the warning system itself is broken.
And finally, the inspector does a visible smoke test. They'll just look for any smoke puffing out of the tailpipe while the car is idling, and they'll also give the engine a couple of quick revs to see if that produces any smoke. The whole point is to catch any obvious, excessive pollution that you can literally see with your own eyes.
All right, now it's time for the main event. For a car like our 99 model, the smog check actually measures the pollutants coming right out of the tailpipe. But to do that, you have to get the car running on a special kind of treadmill. This is called the Acceleration Simulation Mode Test, or ASM test for short. The car's drive wheels are put on a machine called a dynamometer. It's basically a set of rollers. This lets the inspector drive the car at specific speeds, like 15 and 25 miles per hour, without it ever leaving the garage. It's a way to simulate real-world driving so the analyzer can measure emissions while the engine is actually working.
But you can't just throw the car on there and hit go. A whole bunch of strict conditions have to be met first. The engine has to be all the way warmed up, the tires need to have the right amount of air, traction control has to be turned off, and of course, the vehicle has to be safely strapped down. It's basically a highly controlled science experiment to make sure the results are as accurate as they can possibly be.
So after all the visual checks, all the functional tests, and that big emissions measurement are finished, the state-connected testing machine crunches all the data and delivers the final verdict.
And the outcome is pretty straightforward. If your vehicle passes, a certificate is automatically and electronically sent to the DMV, and you get a printout of the results. But if it fails, no certificate gets sent. Instead, you get a detailed report that shows you exactly which part of the test the car failed, so you know what needs to be fixed before you can come back and try again. And that final printout, it's called the Vehicle Inspection Report, or VIR, is the official record of everything that happened. The manual even says the inspector has to personally sign it, basically swearing that they followed every single procedure to the letter. The whole system is built on precision, rules, and ultimately accountability.
So you see, a smog check isn't just about blowing into a tube or hooking up a computer. It's a really comprehensive, systematic, physical for your car. It's designed to make sure your car's whole team of emission control parts is not only present, but also functioning and doing its job to help keep our air clean. So the real question is your car's team still working together?